Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the fourth meeting of the Nature Center Task Force. We will kind of follow a similar pattern and process. One, we want to hear your voice and check your audio, but are just interested in what you've been up to in the time since we last met. I'm going to take note of this, of the order, because it will sometimes change. So if we could, I'm going to go with Melanie. We'll go first. Introduce yourself. There's no good icebreaker question that I had. Last one was around candy, I think, or maybe around just food in general. But what I think I would just, one of the things that we've been experiencing is a lot of people who have virtual fatigue. And so what are the things that you're going to be interested in doing in person when we can safely do those? So maybe if you just, again, share your name, your affiliation or associations, and then something you're going to do looking forward to connecting. And I'll go Marcy, then Audra, and then Jan. I'm sorry, Melanie, Audra, and then Jan.
Hi, I'm Melanie Harding. I work for Tamarack Nature Center. I've missed a couple of these. I was at the first meeting and I've missed a couple, but Marcy and I have been trying to tag team a little bit and make sure we get some coverage here and help out wherever we can. So I haven't, I'm a little behind and looking forward to getting caught up. I think the thing that I'm most looking forward to doing, I'm a hugger, so I'm looking forward to giving people hugs again.
Wonderful. Your audio sounds great, so thank you for that. So we'll go Audra, then Jan, and then Marcy, please.
There. Hi, everyone. Audra Robbins, Parks and Recreation Manager, and I am really looking forward to getting together with my family again and having a big old family dinner and hang out and play with my nieces and nephews. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Good, thank you. Jan, and then Marcy, then Simba, please.
Hi, I'm Jan. I'm a former retired naturalist at Maplewood Nature Center. I actually took a walk there today. It was wonderful. Visit to the past. I'm looking forward to traveling and to seeing my daughter, and who's expecting a baby in a couple weeks. So they live in California, so it's a real difficulty in this time. So thank goodness for Zoom and FaceTime, I must say that.
Exactly. Thank you, Jan. Your audio sounds good. Marcy, then Simba, and then Jim, please.
My name is Marcy Oltman. I am the director of Tamarack Nature Center and work with Melanie. And the thing that I'm looking forward to, except, I could cheat and say all of the above, but I'm looking forward to not having to remember to wear a mask. I don't know how many times I've gotten out of the car all the way to my destination and had to turn around and go back.
Yes, thank you. Audio is good on that. So Simba, then Jim, and then Kathy, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Simba Blood. I am a natural resources technician with the Ramsey, Washington Metro Watershed District. Of course, all of the above, family and travel. I had actually planned to go to several really big music events this year that were ended up being canceled. Really looking forward to live music again.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Jim, then Kathy, then Becca, please.
Good evening, this is Jim Beardsley. I'm the acting president of the Friends of Maplewood Nature Center and Preserves. I'm not sure what I'm looking forward to. There's so many things. One is meeting with all my cohorts that are either photographers or gardeners, plus my family, and seeing my 2-year-old great niece that I've yet to meet.
Oh, exciting. Well, very soon that'll be happening. So thanks, Jim. Kathy, then Becca, then Elizabeth, please.
Thanks, Mike. Kathy Juneman, City Council. I suppose I'm supposed to say I'm looking forward to doing something that revolves around the city, but that's not the top of my list, sorry. My very best friend from forever lives in California, and I normally go there in October to visit. So I'm looking forward to when we can travel a little more freely so I can go and spend time with her.
Good. Thank you very much. Becca, then Liz, then Melinda, please.
Yeah, I'm Becca Bryan, just a community member and naturalist wannabe. And what I'm most looking forward to is being able to connect with people and just not have to remember wearing a mask everywhere I go.
Thank you. Your audio sounds good, and drive safe, please.
Thanks. I'm the passenger, and again, if you lose me, it's just because there's no reception.
Got it. Okay. Elizabeth, Melinda, then Marge, please.
Mike, you can call me Liz. I just have my last Zoom was for a court hearing, so I always put my full name on there. So It's always weird when I hear actually Elizabeth. So I did change that for today.
Okay.
I'm really missing going and doing stuff with my little 5-year-old and going out and not having to be worried about transmission and everything, and getting all the kids together. And with all my girlfriends, we all have kids around the same age. Not planned, swear to God, but it's sad. I miss not seeing having the kids all run around. It's always fun.
Well, soon. Right? I'm an optimist. Then Melinda, and then Marge, please.
There we go. Hi, everybody. Melinda Coleman here, city manager. I am in the same place with Simba. I really miss live music. That was a big part of my life. And so I miss that tremendously. In addition to that, I have a son who lives in Spokane, and I'm looking forward to being able to travel out to visit him and his new wife.
Good. Thank you. Your audio sounds good. Marge, bring us home, please.
And what was the question? I'm very sorry I was late.
That's quite all right. Just who you are, any affiliations you have, and then something you're looking forward to doing to connecting with others.
Oh, okay, sure. So affiliations would be Master Gardening in Washington County. I'm a tree care advisor, citizen pruner, and I'm on the Oakdale Tree Board. So I really care about our nature and, our earth. And let's see what I'm looking forward to, of course, when I'm missing my family and friends. Big volunteer, and almost all of my events except this one, and a couple other Zoom things are all canceled. And so I miss that connecting and gardening and things like that I can do with the community. Thanks.
Good. Well, thank you. Your audio sounds good as well, so thank you. Martha, you just jumped on the call. We're asking folks to say hi and introduce yourself again for the group, and then something you're missing or looking forward to when connecting with other folks. Just so I could give you a little bit of time. People have talked about hugs, they've talked about live music, they've talked about travel, so full range is open to you.
All right. I'm Martha, and I think probably what my family misses the most is being able to spend time with our extended family. So my kids with their grandparents and us with our parents in the ways that we normally do. We've found some ways to do it a little bit, but it's just not quite the same.
Got it. Well, thank you everybody for sharing. I think it's important to kind of use this opportunity to get connected. We've had a chance we sent out the agenda and the summary ahead of time, but just for fun, I'm going to share my screen so you can get a sense. Can everybody see this okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. All right, get stuff out of the way. So as I said earlier, Joe Fox is likely to join us the call. I sent him the other link. So we did introductions, and we want to do kind of a review of the last meeting. We'll go through that material. And then I want to have kind of a round the robin, kind of a summary of our information to date. I know that we've inundated folks with a lot of information. And so just to kind of level set for folks who may have missed a few sessions. And then as we talked about really early on, developing recommendations, part of that includes developing the categories of recommendations. What is the level of environmental education that we're looking to give? What is the service level or the business model for the Nature Center moving forward? What's the right partnership And then more importantly, maybe who is the right partner? There's a lot of choices, a lot of options. And so that was a category that was identified. Financial investments, if there's a strong recommendation regarding sort of the business model, that might need some small investment or some large investment. And so a little discussion about what that looks like maybe on the capital side, but also operating. It's one thing if you had $500,000, you would do this. If you had $20,000, you would do that. And so a little bit of categorizing sort of the funding model. And then also related to the business models, what's the best use of the site and what's the best use of the building? So that would be kind of our discussion tonight. I will say it seems likely that this is a pretty robust conversation that would take more than one meeting and perhaps more than 2 meetings. And so the good news is we have some time to discuss all of those. So don't feel daunted that you have to answer all of them today. I did want to go through and just kind of summarize a little bit of kind of where we were at. Last time, I think if you recall, we did a review of regional nature centers. Those were Richardson Nature Center in Bloomington. Again, that is a large legal entity operated by Three Rivers Park District in the Southwest Metro. The Dodge Nature Center, which is a very large not-for-profit center in West St. Paul. And we looked at the websites of each just to kind of get a flavor for what are the options that are out there. We took advantage of the staff at Tamarack who were on the call. So we got a clear sense of the operation there. We looked at a peer city operation in the city of Roseville, Harriet Alexander. And then we looked at the new Sally Manzera Interpretive Nature Center in Lake Elmo, which is a smaller nonprofit version. We discussed sort of the pros and cons of each, asked a lot of questions. In the notes, I did share some other nature centers that we didn't talk about, but are available in the community. And then we sort of identified some more questions. And so, one of the things that's maybe not embedded in the conversation today, but it is what's the role of friends and volunteers moving forward. And then this was an important question. There was a lot of conversation about what is ongoing programming that can sustain itself and what is the one-off kind of fee service transaction. So there was a debate and a discussion, and I don't think a lot of answers, but I think it's an important part of maybe what we can cover in the next few meetings. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing and organize my screen a little bit. Give me a second. And so one of the things that I'm going to open it up to the group is what's one thing that you've learned or heard that has stuck with you that you think is really important, and either a learning that you want to make sure that we capture, or something that has sort of shifted how you have thought about the Nature Center and its future. And so what I would ask, I don't have a special order or anything. So I'm going to open up to the group. Who would be willing to share something that they've learned or something that has shifted their thinking?
I'll go ahead. One thing that stuck out to me was just the thought of kind of the distributed nature center or a partnership of nature centers. Just operating programming out of more than one nature center and having a collaboration.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Others who would be interested in sharing.
This is Jim.
Hi, Jim.
The interesting thing I learned and have been giving it a lot of thought is a nonprofit organization operating the nature center, and perhaps establishing something like a foundation or a sustainable funding source. Not quite sure what the technical term is for it, but getting it totally out of the city's hands and putting it in the hands of a board of directors and volunteers and raising money that way.
Okay. Thank you. Others? March, go ahead.
Unmute. Yeah, I guess how lucrative it is to have a daycare on site is a nice option. And on that same point, I know somebody mentioned, oh, there's not enough space there, but I've been in some daycares that are pretty darn small. And I can think of a couple local ones that I'm surprised how little space they get by on, as long as there's an outdoor area. Anyway, that's a learning for me to put that together with a nature center. Thanks.
Thank you. Others? This is normally not a shy group, so I'm just sitting in silence for a minute. Go ahead, Jan.
I feel like I believe there's been an offer from someone in the community who wanted to start a preschool. Is that correct? At the site. And I feel like that might be a good short-term solution, keeping the building. You know, I went to the nature center today and I was struck by how some things are, you know, of course, not being taken care of. So I'm concerned about safety and security at the site. And the building, in my opinion, really needs to be occupied. I wonder if a preschool could be established as a short-term possibility, with the hope that something along the lines of some kind of partnership, or as Jim said, a foundation. That would obviously take some time to pull that together. So I rather like that idea. And the other piece of it that I think would be nice is to have some kind of community engagement beyond the preschool, because the preschool obviously would be reaching a rather small number of people. So I don't know if it would work to have a weekend program on Saturdays for families in Maplewood. You build that, make that connection, and keep the idea that environmental programming for people at large may be able to develop. But I don't feel like we want to lose that possibility entirely. So I don't know. That's a thought.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Martha, go ahead.
I think a couple of things that I thought about more after last time too is just some of the different ways of doing programming, like utilizing virtual programming. You know, that could be useful to get started with some programming right now, and also to just have another avenue of programming even when things get back to whatever normal is. And I think along with that, like the not only the school programming, they think that community programming in the past, having, you know, I've participated in programs for residents like related to landscaping or rain gardens and things like that. And I think not having just one category of programming, but, you know, looking at schools and also looking at, you know, adults and other community areas too for programming is beneficial. And I think, oh, the other thing I thought of is we mentioned some of the other spaces, and I think, you know, we've talked about the Nature Center building itself is kind of small for some of those things, but there are all those other sites like the new community building at Wakefield, and even just the outdoor areas of the neighborhood preserves to provide programming in areas that might be more accessible to some people and might get more people involved and more connection with the Nature Center in general.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I was writing furiously. Joe Fox, you just joined us. If you could unmute and say hi, we would love to hear your voice. And then Kathy Juneman, I see you have your hand raised, and so I will call on you next. But Joe, can you hear me? And can you unmute, please? There you go.
Is that better?
That looks great. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was on the other computer and I couldn't hook up until I used my iPad. So I'm with you. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. So what we're asking folks to do is what's one thing that you've heard or learned in the last couple of meetings that you think has been really important or changed how you've thought about the Nature Center? You don't have to answer right now, but I want you to think about it. What's changed in your own mind about your thinking? But I'm going to call on Kathy Juneman first, and then I'll come back to you if that's okay. So Kathy, go ahead.
Thanks, Mike. It's going to make me sound like Scrooge-Nella, but I think what started our issue to begin with is having so much to do and to offer and having to have the staff to do that. And so I want us to really, really think about how we hone in on where we would start with programming and then how we would phase in. How would we do that? What would come next? That type of thing. Because that will determine what kind of staffing we're going to be looking at. And I have never wanted us not to have a naturalist, but I'm also sit on that in those 5 people at the front of a room on Monday nights that have to sign off on a budget. And so I think we have to be very prudent on how we think of the scope and how we phase it back in so that we do it right and it stays. Personally, I talked to Melinda about this the other day. I see that we are going to be having a new environmental technician in the position, and it would be my feeling that possibly we could have that person, whoever he or she is, play the role of and preferably be actually trained as a naturalist, so that you would have a half-time, in my mind, half-time person who could do some things at the Nature Center. Therefore, as a matter of fact, I haven't talked to Melinda about this and she'll probably fall off her chair, but I'm wondering if there's any possibility that the environmental technician could at least office part-time out of the Nature Center. There would be a person in the building. There would be the presence. People would know there was somebody there. And then it would, so we don't lose the total connect about this is a place where education takes place. So that was one of my thoughts on that. And I know we can't overwhelm this person. That job in itself has plenty of responsibilities, but I just think it has the potential to possibly be like a part-time naturalist or clearing place where the volunteers could be coordinated and help with the questions that come in and that type of thing. I just think we have to start zeroing in on what we're going to start with and where we want to go with it. And I don't want to set up what sounds like wonderful programming and then we have no way to make it happen. I want to be able to be sure that we can make something start and happen and not go away again. Just a thought.
Okay,
thank you.
Joe, before I call on you, I do want to, Melinda did put into the chat box that it is true that there is someone interested in using the Nature Center for a preschool. I don't know to what extent it's a serious offer, but it was a request about could they access the building. So there is some genuine interest. I just don't know to the extent that it's how real it is at this moment. So Joe, how about reflections on the last couple of weeks or things that have changed in your own mind?
I'm not sure where to start with that. I'm not sure even what my opinion is until I guess I start talking about it. It'll come to mind. I guess I'm not sure we're all on the same page on when I read now about the position opening, you're talking about another position now. I wonder if we're on the same page about what is our long range objectives? Are we hearing that there is some other priorities being set by council or staff, which is fine. And being housed there, yes, at least open the door and make it look like that we're doing something at the nature center. But if we want to have a complete different direction than we've been at for the last many years, then we have to face the fact that it won't be the same. And it sounds like maybe we're going in a different direction when I hear positions being open and so on. So I guess there's funds out there available on some new focus. I'm not against that, I guess, if we want to buy all into that in our committee.
Sure.
Mike?
Kathy and then Audra.
Okay, Joel, the environmental technician is not a new position. We've had that position for going on 3 years. And there are responsibilities built into that job already. I was just saying possibly it would be a way for us to have this person take on some of the responsibilities of being in the building. And so there would be a way for people to access the building, and she would still have her responsibilities, or he, as an environmental technician. That was my only thought. That's not a new position. We've had it, and it has several responsibilities of its own. I was just thinking that possibly that was a way to help us get back on task with our intent. Thanks, Mike.
Audra, go ahead. You were unmuted.
Thanks, Mike. Yep, Kathy beat me to it, but I was just going to refer to the position to say it's actually for our natural resources coordinator. And for some of you know, Ginny Gaynor was our natural resource coordinator for quite a while. And then Emily Dunlap was in that position for a year, but she left in September to take a position somewhere elsewhere. And so we reposted that position. So it is one, as Kathy said, that was already in place. And they not only would work with the naturalist and deal with, they would also work with our environmental planner. They worked with our public works department. They're very, very varied in their duties. But to build on what Kathy said, I'm actually excited about the idea that maybe this person could do some of that educational, environmental education outreach, and maybe that position could change depending on what the need is and adjust to where we are now. And it's definitely a possibility for some growth and doing some exciting things. So I agree with Kathy there. And then I just wanted to say, just hearing this group talk about how excited and open they are to the idea of partnering with other cities and entities to offer programming, what I've heard is that you all just want it to happen. You want these opportunities to exist for the community. You want them offered somehow. So whether it's a partnership with other nature centers, other entities like the county, Ramsey County or something, just working together to make sure we have a way to provide these opportunities. That's what excites me about what could come out of this task force. So that's just my observation so far.
Thank you, Audra. Go ahead.
I just wanted to respond to the idea as someone who's worked in nature centers for a long time, and I think Marcy would second this. A little red flag goes up because in the nature center world, we tend to get like, well, oh, just you can do that job too. So I would say, while it sounds like a really fabulous idea to combine the position of natural resources coordinator and naturalist together, to be very mindful of that and very careful to make sure that each of those areas is getting the attention and that they need, and that person isn't conflicted in their priorities, because it is a lots of nature centers do it. It's a cost-cutting savings. It's it attracts people who like that, sort of jack of all trades, and so it's kind of a perfect storm for setting someone up. Sometimes setting someone up for a stressful situation. So I just would caution that if that's the way that you decide to go, to just be really mindful creating that job description in a way that is sustainable for that person and for the city.
I appreciate that. That operational insight is helpful and kind of understanding the challenges there.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Marcy, go ahead.
I have kind of lost track of priorities, I guess. I hear on one hand, the priority is it has to be sustainable. Whatever we do has to be self-sufficient and sustainable. And then there's another one where, we need to do programs and find more ways to do programs. But I'm not hearing, I'm confused as to really, what is the priority? Keeping building open because that could mean anything. That could just keeping the building open could mean a retail store, nature retail store. So I'll just leave it there instead of rambling, but that would
yeah, so the charge of the group is to try to make recommendations for the city council to consider how the nature center could operate without property tax subsidy sustainably.
Okay. So it is.
There's a strong financial component that it's, I'm not the finance director, but it's probably 1.5% levy increase to continue operations as they were. And in this environment, I'm not one of the 5 who vote, but I don't think that there's an appetite to raise the levy to fund nature center operations at this moment. Now, if there's a strong recommendation and a strong belief that certain financial investments would put it on a course to be financially sustainable long-term without relying on property taxes, that's an option. But I think what we're trying to do is really brainstorm, how do you keep this great asset, give access to the community, minimizing subsidy. And so you're right, there's a lot of different ways to do that. Ideally, what this group could come forward with is says, here are 3 things that we would do that get us there. And sequencing also matters. Melinda Coleman, you unmuted, and Kathy Juneman raised your hand. So I'll call on Melinda and then Kathy, please.
Thanks, Mike. I would just add to what Mike said. I think maybe Audra is going to get into this a little bit later, but one of the reasons that we still have a natural resource coordinator is that we have a lot of other environmental initiatives. Those being the steps needed to be a Green Steps city. We have an environmental natural resource committee that is really working on reducing our carbon footprint and finding more ways to be a more sustainable city. Also, when the natural resource coordinator position was created, it was really to help manage the open space and the preserves. And so those are the things that were we still need some help with environmental reviews when we have development applications. The natural resource coordinator, as well as Sean Finwall, and actually even people on the engineering team look at the environment in those development proposals. So that's why we still have sort of we had a bifurcation of kind of cutting off the nature center, but keeping some of the other key pieces to do sort of our core work and environmental initiatives. And there's also some budget implications, but I won't get into that. But there's some other things that fund the natural resource coordinator that are required for us to do by federal and state laws in terms of environmental stewardship. So that might help shed some light on why some positions stayed and some were not. And Mike said it very succinctly, to keep the nature center going would be 1.5% levy every year. And we just have too many demands on the public dollars to be able to sustain that. So I'll let maybe Kathy has something to add to that.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Thank you, Mike. Well, what what she said. It isn't a lack of desire or will on the part of the council to have a nature center. That's not the conversation at all. It's how do we do it and then keep it sustainable, because who knows the future of levies for probably the next 5 years at a minimum. And so you can't make it rely on a levy when a levy is voted on by changing bodies in chairs. So I need it to feel comfortable. As I need it to know that it's going to be sustainable, so no one else has to go through this again, and we don't lose the asset. But it would be foolish for us to assume that, okay, well, we'll tell the council we really want this, and then they'll say yes, put it back on the tax. That's not going to happen. So that's why I'm just saying, that's part of the reason I said, could we possibly put this natural resources coordinator person part-time at the nature center to make the building accessible, to make sure that people know it's still there, it's not abandoned. That was my point in bringing that up. I don't want this person to become a naturalist. I want them to be there for the building to be open and for people to leave, like they always had the bird list that people could refer to, and all those things that people loved about having it there, so that we keep it in people's vision and we haven't abandoned it. Because politically speaking, that was kind of a subversive football in this past election. Nasty rumors got circulated that weren't true, of course. We had no intention of keeping it shuttered. That was not why we did this. And so, but that's why our whole goal has to be how we set it up to be sustainable. And does that mean partnerships? Does it mean foundation? What does it mean? And it's a big task, but I think we're up to it, and we are thinking our residents are up to it. But you're just not going to find I don't think, any group of people that sit in elected chairs right now who are willing to take on an ongoing levy. I just don't think it's there. So why dilute ourselves? I think we should aim at how do we get it? And in the meantime, how do we keep that asset going? The building itself, people having access. Maybe you perhaps don't all know that at the last council meeting, because there was money set aside for it, there are repairs being done on the trails and the boardwalk so that people see that we care about this place. And yes, you're welcome to be there. And we want it to be into the future. As far as the use, we have to be a little careful, because when the original arrangement was made with the DNR, we cannot sell that. Not that we want to, but we can't sell that property for anything else. It's supposed to be a nature center. That's a good thing. That's a wonderful safety valve. So so I'm just trying to look for a way that until we get the whole thing set up and where it's going to go, we might have a way to have somebody there that says, we care about this building. We care that you want to come here. That was my total idea, and having the natural resource coordinator be possibly there part-time. I was just trying to give us a kind of a link.
Got it. Melinda, you're unmuted, so I'm thinking you're next.
I just had another quick comment. I don't remember who raised the issue about getting input from others, our residents. We are going to be doing that. In fact, we just sent out, or in the process of sending out, a citizen survey to our residents, which the major reason was to get input on our park and rec programming and the nature center. And so we will have that data in probably another month, maybe less. And then it's the council's intention to have a community forum, and we're just going to have to work on how we figure that out with COVID, but that is our intention. So that's another piece I don't think we've really talked about much, but that is going to happen.
Good. Marcy, it was a good question. It generated a lot of discussion. Was it helpful, the answer?
Yes,
It was.
it was
Okay.
for me.
Good,
But
thanks.
But I do think that we have a phrase that, at the Nature Center, and it really should only be, voiced within a certain group, but programs don't make money. They just don't. It's like every other education. Education costs money, and it rarely pays for itself in terms of the school groups, and it's a shoestring operation at best. But what sparked an idea was, what about combining education and some sort of enterprise, like a coffee shop with sustainable coffee and education around that kind of stuff, so that you combine a revenue source with the education piece, birds and blooms, or something, whatever it is, that puts a different twist on what a nature center can be, and what an enterprising revenue stream would be married to that.
All right, thank you. Martha, go ahead.
Marcy's comment just made me think of, and again, this is part of the Three Rivers Park District, but one of their parks I was just at the other day, Silver, I can't remember if it's Silverview or Silverwood. They're building there. I don't know what all it's used for, and it's a pretty big building. I think, it can be used for like wedding rentals and things like that. But part of what they have, that Marcy's comment triggered, is they do have like a little cafe there. So people coming to walk at the park can, get cafe type food and drinks while they're there. They also have, have displays of, items to purchase that looked like some of them were locally made, by artists. And I don't know for sure how much of that is revenue for the park and how much of that is just a display place for people. But it made a connection in my head when Marcy commented that there are some things that might bring in revenue in a different way that would be a suitable fit to that kind of space.
Maybe a good partnership would be Wild Birds Unlimited, the bird feeder store. Is that the right name? And have a little satellite site and a naturalist person to help people do that. I don't know.
Jan, you've got your hand raised.
I think that would be really interesting to have a naturalist barista, I must say. There's a part of me that does like your idea. I'm also thinking back to a comment that I made a couple meetings back. Well, first of all, I just tonight was saying preschool, possibly with programming on the weekends, that might be a practical short-term solution for taking care of the building, keeping it active, but it doesn't, of course, take care of the outdoors part, which is what people are seeing right now. There's some things that are beginning to look a little unkempt in my mind, just because Anne's been gone for a month and a half. Something I said a couple of meetings back was in response to the idea that foundations and grants don't fund operations, and I think that's really true. But it's different when you have an environmental focus that serves a population that's in the community that needs some kind of assistance, where going out in nature will nurture whatever it is that they need to do. And there's just a number of Maplewood's a first tier suburb. So what happens in the city affects Maplewood to maybe a slightly less extent, but it definitely affects Maplewood. And I would guess, I'm talking about this from my experience of being on the board for the Weavers Guild of Minnesota. If you talk about serving the Hmong or the Karen or any kind of disadvantaged group, you can get those funding dollars. And I think that to look at Maplewood as a community and see where the needs are and see whether a program could be set up that might, and have some discussions with some of the leaders in those various areas, social agencies and nonprofits that work with people who would benefit from being outdoors, even during a pandemic. So I personally think that that might be a really good way to go. And then the other part of it is that I've said before that a huge part of our programming was directed to getting people engaged in doing restoration projects or thinking about gardening in their homes, for wildlife, for pollinators, so forth. Working outdoors is very, very, I mean, you can think about it yourself, but for people who have whatever it is that they need to come to terms with, working outdoors is very restorative. And it's really wonderful to be part of restoring a piece of land and then be able to bring your family back and look and see what we've done, whether you're a, you know, a third grader or an adult. It's really wonderful. And as a naturalist, it was wonderful to work with people in that capacity. And this is something as well that comes to mind, that the natural resource coordinator position, the natural resource coordinator position often has goals that are restoration goals that can be to some extent carried out by volunteers under the direction. So there might be a way to merge the, you know, the needs of taking care of the grounds and or doing projects out in the preserves with a volunteer base that could also benefit from it personally. So I'd like to just throw that idea out. And have the barista naturalist bar there on the weekends.
Well, and I'll just, Audra, there was a group of volunteers just this past weekend. Why don't you share that little story?
Yeah, actually, they were paid. They were with the Conservation Corps. It was a group from Minnesota and Iowa. However, it was provided free to the city of Maplewood. We did not pay them, but they came out. They spent 3 days out at Fish Creek. So if you've been out there recently, you'll see some big piles of buckthorn that we're going to be picking up because they went out and did a lot of work. And so groups like that, that was a big part of what the Natural Resources Coordinator does, coordinating that and working in conjunction. And yes, absolutely, some of the restorative projects can be done at the Nature Center as well, because that's one of our preserves and open spaces. So we definitely, using volunteers is integral to getting the things done that we want to do.
Yeah, that model, that model works, and it's in place in other parts of the city. So so in fairness, I lost track of where we were on the screen. So maybe that's a good signal to transition over to the next part of our agenda, which is kind of a review of, and I just had it, I apologize. Audra, one of our requirements is to talk about environmental education broadly. Would you, while I pull this up on the screen, why don't you start, and then I'll get this up for everybody. You're muted though.
And I just muted myself. Yeah, as Melinda had referred to, and Mike as well, that we have environmental education. Oh.
Yep, sorry.
Did you see what you're pulling up?
Yep. Well, this is, yeah.
Yep, it is a big part of some of the other things that we do. And this is just the plan that was set up earlier this spring. Again, COVID, wreaking havoc on a lot of things, but this was the plan that our natural resources coordinator worked in conjunction with Public Works and put together and our environmental planner as well to come up with a idea of what we could do as far as to satisfy the requirements that the city has to do some education, environmental education. And one of them was maintenance for home rain gardens. It would be, the goal was to educate residents about rain garden maintenance, specific activities. There was going to be a class in the spring for adults. Summer, it was going to be creating videos with the communication department. Issue 2 was dealing with illicit discharge. And so the audience was residential landowners, and the goal was to increase homeowners' knowledge about water quality impacts from your grass clippings being, going down into the sewers and things. And so they read an article and to put in the city newsletter. It actually was in part of the seasons brochure. It's a supplemental environmental brochure that is added to the Maplewood Living and goes out to all residents. And that article was in an issue of the Maplewood Living it this year, but still trying to satisfy these. This is a flexible plan. It's kind of what the city comes up with, what they can do, and it's really important work that we do. And so this is stuff that is important for us to carry on, and it's a requirement for each year, just trying to satisfy these requirements. So, and then I think, Mike, you were gonna maybe show kind of a plan of what we've done, like a completed year. 2020 is that kind of strange year where we got off track a little bit, but I think.
Yeah, so this is the 2019 Stormwater Education Plan, and again, it's really an important part of our requirements for state and federal requirements for managing stormwater and water quality. And so we have, again, you can kind of see the goal is to educate residents and students about stormwater impacts and what can be done to improve water quality. We try to work in seasons because it's often easier that way. And then what I was going to share also is on the city's website under our Environment and Natural Resources section, we have a section on water resources. So we do stormwater pollution. We talk about what homeowners can do. We also then are required to complete an annual stormwater pollution prevention plan. And just to give you a sense for, I'll click on this document. It's only 60 pages, but it really kind of gets down to, for example, this is the 2019 plan. Again, the Natural Resources Coordinator is responsible for educational information around outreach, developing and maintaining an implementation plan. And so there is a kind of a robust linking of environmental education that goes. What we try to do is then document that education to make sure, that we're accountable for the work that we're doing, but B, also that we have measures and metrics that get at how many people are we reaching and really what kind of an impact we're making. So obviously I'm going through this really quickly, but our city engineer is responsible for maintaining a list of priority areas likely to have illicit discharge based on our previous information, and we're supposed to report that information. So this is a really robust program and offering. And what I think is important, and I didn't share it to the same extent, but it really is all departments in public works. It's folks in community development. It's obviously folks in parks and recreation and in our nature center. So there really is a really strong environmental education component. The city has relied on nature center staff for that work in the past, and we're obligated to do it and do it well. I think one of the things that this group should think about is what's the role of environmental education and who's best able to serve and do that work. I'm going to stop there. Kathy Juneman, you've got your hand raised. Why don't you jump in, please?
Thanks, Mike. Well, you took a little bit of it away, but bear in mind that the name on that, Virginia Gaynor, she was a naturalist. So we basically took our naturalist and took advantage of her education and her dedication and made her a natural resources coordinator because she had all the knowledge, plant knowledge, etc., on how to do this and do it well. And that's kind of why I said what I did, how many minutes ago now, that a natural resources coordinator for us in the back of our minds anyway, often lies with being a naturalist. And so it's not taking anything away from the fact that she was a naturalist and worked at the Nature Center. It's an expansion in my mind. And it was a good way to educate the public of what the role naturalists play in their everyday lives and our everyday life as a city. So it's actually quite a natural partnership, if you will. And it does bring people closer to what they can do and what nature is about and what preserving is about. And so her role was like, she was like two people. I mean, and it's a good thing. She had a lot of energy, but the point is they do mesh. And so that's why I said what I did quite a while ago about, I think the two do mesh for us. And if that's the way we have to go to get back into it and maintain until we can get back full blown what we want, I just think it's probably something that could work and people will recognize it. They will recognize it as part of their dedication to the preservation of nature. They see it that way. Thanks, Mike.
Yep, thank you. So this is obviously an important part of the city's work. Most cities do this work, and it does. It's a part of there's a fee that's paid every month. So the two largest contributors to some of our environmental education dollars are the Maplewood Mall and 3M are some of our biggest contributors, and so it's a big piece of our work, and we're often our EUF fund is well funded and actually pays for a lot of variety of things. Melinda, you were around when this was created. Would you want to share a little bit of history around kind of funding, and you want to add anything else from a staff perspective or a city perspective?
I was reading a different email. I apologize. So what was the question?
Can you talk about the funding from the EUF and how some of that works and the value that gives to the city?
Sure. Very generally, the EUF fund was created probably back in the early 2000s. And it was a way to really help pay for our environmental planner, Sean Finwall, and for the natural resource coordinator, but it also is a funding mechanism for many of our public works improvements, such as road improvements and keeping our sewer lines maintained, that kind of thing, and also to do new stormwater work, which is really expensive. So that was a fund that was created to generate the appropriate revenue to do public works projects and also to hire, maintain 2 staff people. That was the early 2000s was where we really started getting serious about environmental education and getting involved in how can we be a more sustainable government and city. I know Ms. Juneman, Councilmember Juneman, was very involved in getting the city interested in this. She was an activist for environmental causes before she was a council member. So I've had the pleasure of working with Kathy for a very long time, and her passion is unparalleled. So perhaps maybe Kathy could add a little more color to my very brief overview.
Well, you basically defined it, but as those of you who are involved in nature centers or are nationalists, you know how it is about people wanting everything, but where do you get the money for it? I mean, you've lived through it how many times? And so I think you have to learn how to be, in my mind, clever about blending the necessary things like stormwater management with the total advantage it is to everyone's life and to helping nature. And it has 2 reasons. Number one, we have to do it, because if we don't, we can be shut down it's something you have to do. But how do you do it? Do you just tell people, well, this is what you're doing and get over it? Or do you educate them about how what they do in their daily lives makes a huge difference? And so that's where we made the choice to blend together something that must be done with educating people about there's a certain amount of joy and satisfaction in meeting that so-called regulation and going beyond it. And that's where we got started. We were for a long time the rain garden capital of the state of Minnesota. And that's very much due to Ginny Gaynor, because she did the mapping out, and she would go to anybody's corner and tell them what kind of plants. I mean, it was horrendous. But it was absolutely embodied what we were about. And so that's why I see this as, I don't want to orphan the nature center again, because I think we did too much of it in the past. And I think we missed the boat. I won't even tell you how many years ago, but it was long before I sat in the chair I'm in now, by saying there's the parks system and then there's the nature center. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. The nature center is a park with many more advantages. It's a better asset than your average park. And part of that is being educated. Part of it's being in nature and seeing things that you don't see anywhere else, that you don't experience in another park. And so I've been really climbing those stairs for several years now, trying to beat on people to say, it is a park. And by the way, you'll notice that it also has a play area now, and there's a little place where you can have a picnic, so it is a park. But aside from that, it's a park with a whole bigger scope and has so much more to offer. And so one of my things I wanted to push when we were getting into this jam we're in now is we need to educate everybody that it's not the Parks Department and the Nature Center. It's all one big, wonderful way to enjoy yourself and learn. And if we can picture learning when we're out in nature or learning when we're even in a park, it will come to people so much more easily. They're like, oh yeah. And all of a sudden, environmental education isn't something you have to go do. It's there. And it's in your everyday life. And so I'm just trying to keep us on that track so that I think we can get where we want to go. And trust me, the council wants the nature center back. This is not about not wanting. It's about having to find a better way to do. And we've done it before, we can do it again. But I just had to, when the EUF fund came about, really because we had all this great, I guess you can say, publicity about our rain garden program, which was really that's really a natural resources program. It's not really anything else. It's only a public works program because it helps with stormwater management. But they're gorgeous and they attract butterflies and birds and bees and blah, blah, blah. And so that's where you get your in with people. And they're like, oh, well, this is about nature. Uh-huh. I mean, I have a large rainwater garden thanks to the street project of, oh my word, 14 years ago. I can't believe it. And every single spring and summer, people who walk go, that is so beautiful. And I have converted at least, doesn't sound like much, but 4 people in my area have gone and done it because they're like, I want that in my yard. Look at the butterflies. Okay, that's what I'm saying. The EUF fund was a way for us to fund nature, preservation, and, oh, by the way, some regulations that we have to follow. And that's what I'm hoping we can continue to do. I'll be quiet now.
I've got Joe Fox, Jan, Marcy, and then Jim. He just popped up on the screen. So I'll go Joe, Jan, Marcy, Jim. Go ahead, Joe. You're still muted. You got to hit mute one more. There we go. Go ahead.
Is that better?
Yep.
Thanks, guys, for bringing up the watershed. Anything that was education program that went throughout the county, I think a lot of your staff was very instrumental. I was on the Ramsey County Saltwater Conservation Board when we helped Maplewood start that program and funded quite a bit of the materials and so on that went in with that. But that was something that environmental program really did for the city of Maplewood. There's a lot of those out there, and I think people in general, the residents, really appreciated support from council and from our staff in helping those homeowners establish those spots. That's good. I was here by support what Kathy said was great.
Good. Thank you. Jan, then Marcy, then I think Jim.
Okay, just to give a little bit more history. Yes, the Nature Center and the Natural Resources Coordinator actually worked very closely together. First, Ginny was under Ann's direction, but later she moved up into City Hall and assumed more responsibility. The programming that had to do with, you know, water education, stormwater education, natural resource education, grew out of our partnership, I think, with the watershed district, as well as our increasing awareness as we start, and then the knowledge of doing service learning was so important. So it was very definitely a partnership with the watershed district, the EUF fund that came into being, that created the practical aspect of creating rain gardens. And Ginny started out that program and the naturalists. I wanted to mention too that the education part, I do feel a little uneasy about having the natural resource coordinator. Well, let me put it this way. It took 3 naturalists to implement the educational program for the schools. We would have maybe, I don't know, several schools, 4 or 5 sessions per class per school in order to educate the kids about stormwater education. We did a very intensive activity there. Then there was the big planting day when school after school would come out with their kids, a class at a time. So this was very, very staff, you know, a lot of input from staff and volunteers. So having one person run that program, the rain garden program, as well as do the education, I think is a little, you know, it would be very difficult. Let's put it that way. The other thing I want to mention too is that the EUF fund also funded the large majority of the naturalist staff salaries. And so that input from the EUF greatly fed the program that we're talking about right now. So, you know, it just seems like there is a funding source there. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention so that you are aware of that. It's not just the city budget that must come before the council and be approved for taxation of citizens. It is a ready fund that's already there, the EUF fund. So thank you.
Thank you. Marcy and then Jim, please.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kathy, for all of that information, because I'm like re-energized again. It's like it's like we're talking, there are 2 sides to the coin, and there's a solution here. I feel like there's a solution here, and I don't quite know what it is, but there is a standard model for what you consider a nature center operation to be, and it's the school programs and the public programs, and kind of look at it from a generalist standpoint. We want to serve everybody and teach them everything about everything in nature. And so maybe there's an opportunity here to scale, I don't want to say scale down, but scale differently, and use the asset of the natural resource position, but not push it into the nature center model. Create a different kind of model that serves both education and the action and citizens in Maplewood. And I'll just say one more thing. Are you familiar with the Association for Nature Center Administrators at all?
No.
Anyone? It's a huge, wonderful resource. And the reason I bring it up is because they have a program that it's called a peer consult, and they bring nature center professionals from all over the country, handpicked for whatever it is you would like to do, to come in, assess, spend 2 or 3 days assessing the situation, coming up with a report, and they only charge expenses. There's no Nobody gets a salary from this. This is a service that they do for for ANCA and for ANCA members. So when you get to the point of narrowing down what things can be done, that would be a great resource for you. And it's really very cost effective.
Good. Thank you very much. Jim, why don't you go ahead?
Thanks, Mike. Couple things that came up from listening to Kathy. First one is the nature center is really a park, and that's true. Perhaps one of the marketing things we should be doing is referring to the area as the Maplewood Nature Center Park and Rec area. Kind of eliminating that cutoff between a park and rec and the nature center. They're all part of the same thing. You've got a little play area, you've got a little park there to have lunch, which I did when I worked for 3M. The trails to walk in for education. So you kind of combine the two. The second one was just a question, and that is, we have a program that I know that was taught at the Nature Center called Minnesota Naturalists. What is their role? Why don't we use them as part of our education program?
I am going to look to others. Jan, you've got your hand raised, and then Audra, if you're next, if there's more needed.
I think what you're thinking of, Jim, is the Master Naturalist Program, which is based
Correct.
on the Master Gardener Program, in which they go through 10 sessions, about 40 hours of natural history programming, and then they do a capstone project. We have taught that program a couple times at the Nature Center, and what we found is that the Master Naturalists, once they graduate, they're very interested in what I was talking about before. They're very interested in service learning. They're very interested in projects. Very, very few of them are interested in teaching or leading groups, especially of groups of children, of school children. So I'm not saying that's not a bad idea. It certainly would be very helpful, but I do think that you would still need a staff person to coordinate and run the program and do scheduling and do all of the things that require a consistent person there to respond to requests and scheduling. But I think there's a place for the Master Naturalist for sure.
Yeah, I'm not proposing the Master Naturalists take over. I'm a Master Rosarian from the American Rose Society. My job is to teach. I answer questions on the phone, I answer questions online, I go out and teach. And I have to do that at least, well, there's no hour limit, but the more you do it, the better it is. So I'm thinking, why can't we use those people for projects that require somebody to be the lead educator? Maybe it's not children, maybe it's adults. Maybe it's teenagers, if they're not really good with little kids. I'm just trying to find resources that we can do this with.
Yeah. So Jim, how I heard what you said is how do you leverage others who might be interested in doing this?
Well, that's a particular group that has a goal or something involved with the naturalist area. Why don't we use them? I mean, people use master gardeners. I happen to be a master gardener instructor. I teach master gardeners around the area growing roses, besides doing my own. So why don't we use the people that we've spent the time and money on teaching to do some of that for us? Make them the offer.
Joe, you had your hand raised up.
Well, I was just going to build on that. I started the Master Gardener program in 1974 here in Ramsey County. And that was still going strong today. This is part of the University Extension Program. That's the professional staff that trains and manages the Master Gardener program. Then about, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago, they started that training, the Master, what was the handle? I lost the handle on the title, but the Naturalist program. So I think we could tie that into that Master Gardener and the staff with the university that help supervise that part as a resource.
Good.
I guess
Appreciate
that was, I will share that, you know.
Yeah, thank you. Jan, go ahead, one more.
Just a little follow-up. Unlike the Master Gardener program, which requires upon graduation that you put in so many hours of education each year, the Master Naturalist program is different. They don't have a requirement of education. I just wanted to clarify that. The other aspect of it too is that we, when planting rain gardens with children, we contacted Master Gardeners asking if they would help with help the children to make sure that they were following instructions when planting. So it was instructing the children. And the Master Gardeners actually, Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we were told that when the Master Gardeners, in order to get their credits, they had to be teaching adults. And so we had great difficulty in finding Master Gardeners who would help with children. So that was,
they can
is
work
that
with
correct?
adults. Yes. So they can work with adults and youth.
Mm-hmm.
Master Gardeners.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Marge, go ahead.
Yeah, I am a current Master Gardener in Washington County. And in fact, when we report our hours, we're asked how many children and youth we teach. So that could be a legacy thing. I mean, I've been a Master Gardener since '96, and I have done teaching at over at Tanner's Lake there. And they encourage us. That's a totally positive thing. That we educate kids. And I've done water garden projects, rain garden projects with the watershed district where I've gotten hours teaching kids how to plant. So that is an advantage. I mean, and I think you should take advantage of that, our services, because we're there, we're free, we're supposed to get volunteer hours.
You have a whole demonstration garden at the Washington County Fair, Master Gardeners.
Yeah. And by the way, if we do teach a class, we're asked to have a fee, but when we do volunteer projects, there's no fee.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Thanks, Marge.
Yep.
Kathy, you have your hand raised. Is that, but I don't know if that was new or old. I apologize.
New, actually.
Okay.
So I'm going to stick my neck out there one more time. What else is new? I've been doing it for so long. My neck is quite long. I think all these programs are really good, and there are people available. And so I'm going to stick my neck out and say what I've been saying since we first had to make this horrible decision. I don't see us able to do what we want to do over the long haul without at least a half-time naturalist. That is going to have to be, in my mind, a goal at some point. But in the meantime, what do we do to make sure the building is occupied part of the time and kept up? We are making investments in the trails and the boardwalk and everything now. So I'm trying to find a bridge to where the thing falls into place and becomes more like what we wanted it to, what it was before, and more what we want it to be now. And so I'm just looking for a bridge. So that was that's my original comment about the natural resources person, is not to make that person into a naturalist. It was to make that person office out of the building, so the building had some life and people knew we were still investing in body to be there, because it's important to us. That's all I'm going for. And because we have the natural resources coordinator position funded, that person could possibly be given a couple of minor responsibilities that had to do with environmental education, that we tie it all together. Like I said before, rain gardens made us who we are as a community interested in preserving nature. That is where we came from. And we can't, well, we can, but I won't be signing on them. But I don't think we can send to the council, because I don't think we'll get buy-in, a thing that says we want the nature center open as a nature center and we want it staffed by a naturalist like now. That's not going to go anywhere. It just, I can tell you it's not. It's not in the 2021 budget. And so we have to find a way to give it life so it doesn't look like it's not there anymore, because it is there and we want it there. But I think we have to talk with Audra about how we get some natural resources programming, whether it's virtual or whatever it is, as they're going to try and do more parks programming. Remember, we have a parks task force right now too. And so at some point we are going to have to try and mesh a little bit of our goal and how to make it come about with them. Otherwise, we become pie in the sky. And I don't want to do that. I want to have a long range plan. And I think we need to say X number of years, we're looking for in this building to be staffed by a naturalist, blah, blah. I mean, come on. Yes, we do. But how are we bridging that? And how are we going to, shall we say, sell our programs, partially park program, partially natural preservation programs, to the public in the meantime? And so you have to have some kind of a person to whom various volunteers are responsible and who can, at maybe only 2 afternoons a week, I don't know, I haven't come up with the program, but occupy the nature building so people know it's there and it's open to you. We just have to make sure we're bridging to the next step so we don't lose everything. That's a fear to me, and I would like somebody to take that fear away. Thank you. And I don't want to dream so big that in 3 months we either do this or we have nothing. No. We have to think of a way to bridge it and be serious.
So
and I just want to be able to sell that to my colleagues, which is why I bring it up.
Sure. I'll just make a couple of comments because I'm also the host of the Parks and Rec Task Force, and Audra staffs it really well. And I do this role. So we are in the middle of those conversations as well about how do we offer athletic programming, how do we offer youth programming for dance, for volleyball, for soccer, for all sorts of things. And then how do we also offer that for adults? So it is a broader conversation. We're also talking about that includes partnerships with the YMCA, that includes agreements with other cities to let those things. So this is an important conversation that's part of a broader conversation that is ultimately has a holistic perspective. I think one of the things I want to do is Martha typed into the chat message and I didn't catch it earlier and I apologize, but a couple of comments were, I was wondering if there's any way Parks and Rec and the Nature Center might collaborate, like Kathy mentioned. Nature Center area is a setting very much like a park, and there's a lot of recreation that can be done there. I know there's a task force talking about that. Maybe there's a way to cut costs in both by overlaying them more. And then I also have the thought that perhaps some programming could be provided by community expert volunteers. This could still be run by a naturalist to collaborate with planning, etc. Just an extra way to get some of the programming at our cost. And another comment that says, this is Melanie's comment, one place all of this intersects. Natural resources, education, community engagement is citizen science. Could the new model that Marcy suggested be built around citizen science? And then that was the last comment was good idea. So there's a lot that's there, and there's a lot of dialogue. And Martha, you just popped up on the screen, so I'm going to call on you and suggest that maybe you want to add a little bit more to the comments I just read.
Honestly, I actually just finished eating my dinner. And I was keeping up with my, just putting my thoughts in the chat. So I think that's all I've got for now.
Okay, appreciate it. I hope it was still.
you.
I hope it's delicious. Go ahead, Audra.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to add, because I did see Martha, I did see your comments, and it kind of speaks, like, I apologize, I don't remember who said it earlier about making it clear that, I believe it was Kathy, Councilmember Juneman, that said, making it clear to the public that the Nature Center, while it's a very specialized entity and does unique work and outreach and education, and it is a unique site, is part of the Parks and Recreation Department. And I think, people have kind of thought of them as separate entities, but they are actually part of the Parks and Recreation Department. And we have collaborated with programming quite a bit, in the past. In fact, they were key, having the naturalists come. They did education at our day camps. We even did service learning projects. We did some planting and did some rain garden education with the day camp kids that would come every summer. They're part of our special events. They manned booths that had simple projects and art projects and other learning things that helped with the education and making people aware of the environment, but it was fun activities. So they were a huge part of our community outreach events. So that was definitely a very big part. They do work together. So I just wanted to, but it sounds like maybe we didn't make that, really clear to people that it was part of a collaboration there, and they were a part of that. So I hope that maybe answers your question, Martha, there. And as far as the citizen science, and again, Jan, if you want to chime in, but the citizen science monitoring program, they are still happening. We still have people that are volunteering and bringing in the reports for some of the things that they did, but expanding that program, that sounds like that might be something that you could definitely look into with volunteers. And then to speak to Jan, your concerns about having one person and being able to do all the things they did before, I have to echo what Kathy said. Right now, with the way things are, we aren't going to be able to 100% go back to all the things that were done before. But, as Kathy said, a bridge just to start, maybe having some of those programs, and then really trying to reach out to volunteers and people who are supportive and friends of the Nature Center. You do have to have at least one staff member who can coordinate, check background checks, because whenever you work with kids, that's something that needs to be done to make sure these volunteers, whether they're volunteers or not, they need to be safe to be around kids, all those things. But then get volunteers that can come and share their joy of nature and the environment, and help be there to deal with a little bit larger groups when you don't have the staff on board. So those are just some of my thoughts to the comments in the comment box.
Real quickly, I'm going to call on Liz, but Marge did say that the new term for citizen science is community science. So it's trying to get away from the word citizen, because it's more inclusive, because not every resident is a citizen. So call it community science. Liz, go ahead.
So what I'm hearing here, I hear a lot of really great ideas here, and a lot of the ideas do need a naturalist, where I think goes back to some of the conversations we were having at other meetings, where this is where the collaboration with other, either nature centers or other cities might be worthwhile, because then we could borrow their naturalists to try to do some of these activities. But in the meantime, I do agree that we need to figure out a way that we can start running the nature center that doesn't require a naturalist. And that goes to, if somebody's interested in renting it out for pre-K, maybe we do look at that. Maybe if, that is a temporary, fix, because maybe they can't find other buildings right now to do it at. And that would be a great way to have just presence there. So when other people come, they see that it's busy and they see that it's active. I like there's a lot of nature centers, and I see Tamarack doing this too, where they have a lot of self-guided activities, particularly in the pandemic here. And I know that there's issues with Wi-Fi, and I'm not a techie person, but I don't know if we can get a hotspot or something along those lines, so that we could start doing some of the barcode scanning and the bird watching and, some of those other really great activities you can do there on that boardwalk, maybe, fishing and the snowshoeing, all these self-guided things that you can encourage people to do. And I think a lot of it has to do with letting people know that we have those opportunities. And I feel like I talk to my neighbors here, and they, you know, I live by a lot of folks who are Hmong, and they don't really have much idea of what goes on at the nature center. And I think, you know, the people who want to know, like us, right? The folks who really are into nature and really into environment and community programs, we look for those things. But quite frankly, I didn't really find out about the existence of nature centers at all until I had a child. And I was like, what have I been doing my whole life? Like, these are great, you know? So some kind of better communication and outreach. And I know we're on Facebook and other things, but again, that's still limited to folks who are looking for those groups. And I like the kid activities idea. Anything with kids right now, I think is going to be really easy to sell, even if it's just like more self-guided children things where you're doing it as a family, then getting out. We're looking for reasons to get out all the time, you know, so we're going to, you know, be checking that stuff out at these various places. But I think we need to get back to, and again, I always feel like I'm the spoil sport whenever I'm in these things and in these meetings, is because it's like we have to get back to, you know, we have our short-term goals and our long-term goals. And I think our short-term goals means we can't get everything that we want, but we can at least have the nature center up and running and get some momentum in the community behind it. Like I remember one of the meetings, there was a discussion that we don't have a big donation from the Friends of the Nature Center here like they do in other cities. So starting getting involvement and spreading the word, and then hope from there, you know, we get more interest, and then, you know, more funding or more donations from the community to be able to expand and get a naturalist, you know, maybe set that as a goal for next year. But I just, you know, I do want to make sure we have something to bring to the council that is doable and that they will vote on. And, you know, maybe we have our wish list, right? We all have a wish list. I mean, I have one on Amazon that's like 75 pages long, right? So, you know, we all have a wish list, and I think we can put that in there. And I was the one that poo-pooed on the preschool before, but then the woman who was here from the Tamarack yesterday said that they started a preschool when they were a really small facility. And my whole thing is I just thought that maybe there was more regulations on it, but apparently not. So like, let's get some kids in there. Let's get some people in there. Let's do it. But I'm just more of the operations person on that kind of side. So again, I poo-poo on things before I have full information. So those are just my 2 cents as I'm listening in and writing down my thoughts and comments.
Goal is goal. This is Kathy.
Well, I appreciate that. So Jan, you're unmuted. Did you want to add something?
I'm going to piggyback on what Liz said. Revenue from renting the building as a preschool, I have no idea what that revenue might be. But whether that could, some of that revenue could be used to actually fund a part-time naturalist position on Saturdays is just something that comes to mind. I don't know if the practicality of that, but it's a possibility.
So it is 6:36, which means we've got 24 minutes left by my count, approximately. And one of the things that I think I would like to get at is really defining the categories for we made a recommendation. And I think I'm gonna build a little bit on what Liz just said. So and actually, let me just share my screen just so we have a sense for. Can folks see this? Okay. Yep. Okay, thanks. So we talked a little bit about environmental education today, and this seems to be one of the categories. It's something that the city is obligated to do. Historically, has used the Nature Center as part of that environmental education. Does this, and I'm going to ask the group kind of just broadly, does this category feel like an important thing that it would want to make a recommendation on? And then I also want to talk about this service level business model as a category. Does this feel like an important category that you want to make a recommendation on? And I'll give you an example. So for an environmental education, a hypothetical recommendation could be the city should partner with the watershed district and someone else unknown to assist with environmental education and outreach. Could be like a very simple, broad recommendation that gives the group some direction and that gives the staff some direction on where to go. As far as the business model, the recommendation could hypothetically be the city should pursue a short-term lease with somebody, coffee shop, daycare, retail establishment on managing the building, or pursuing partnership agreements with other nature centers. So as a broad category. This third one is this partnership. The word partner has been mentioned 220 times in our meetings. Who is our best partner? Can we rank them as, pursue this one first and this one second, and here's why. This fourth category is financial investments. It seems like an important category. Maybe it's install a hotspot. Maybe it's hire a naturalist. Maybe it's rename the building and put new signs on the entryway of saying "Welcome to the Park Nature Center." And then there's this best use of the site of the building. Jan, I trust that you know what quality looks like in the building. So if you're seeing it deteriorate a little bit, how do we best take care of the physical asset? I have these 5 categories because what I'm looking for, I want to make sure that we have, is that we have the right categories which was to think about. And are we missing any? And I think the one that I heard today is the use of volunteers and expertise probably is its own category. So there are sort of these 6 broad categories. A, does this feel like the right mix? B, would you prioritize one of the categories over another? And then C, is there a sequencing or a schedule that you think matters? So what I really want to get is, do we have the right categories? Do we have to have them in a certain order? And is there a sequencing? Maybe we have 2 recommendations in each, or 3 recommendations based on schedule. Because if we took every idea we had, I think we could work for the next 25 years. And I don't think we have 25 years. So I want to be thoughtful and put some parameters around this, but I'm trying to gauge feedback. Do these feel right? And what would you recommend? Martha, go ahead.
Don't know that I have an answer quite yet. I was wondering if you could leave those displayed while we think an answer.
Of course. I just took it down, so give me a second. So environmental education could be who we partner with, or what's the best way to deliver environmental education. So. Go ahead, Liz.
Sure. I mean, my thoughts are, if our immediate need is want people there, we want to make it look busy, and we want to see if we can get in some income, we figure out which one is our biggest income generator. And it seems to me that that would be using the building somehow, or renting it out, or letting another organizations using it. And then my second thing would be the partnership, because the partnership might guide what type of education programs that we offer or can offer at that level. Will just be my thoughts. I mean, again, I don't think without knowing numbers on how much you could get for rents, or even, from a coffee shop. I know Peace Coffee, for instance, just closed a bunch of places in Minneapolis. They probably got, too high a rent and everything too. So, I mean, there's options for these alternative places for these businesses to go.
Kathy and then Joe, please.
Thanks, Mike. The only reason I'm going to bring this up is because it's a consideration when we're talking about some of these options. If you talk about anything with food, you have another whole piece you have to deal with, and inspection and all that type of thing, or you can't serve food of any kind. And then we also will have the upkeep by the way of janitorial service and that type of thing. So when you're going to make a use for the building, there will be an expense incurred right off the top. And I'm not saying that's not something we should do. I'm just saying we need to bear that in mind.
Thank you. Joe Fox, go ahead.
I was wondering if Jim had any input and where the Friends would fit in on any of these categories. We have a group of volunteers, if you want, call the Friends in that category. Are we getting input by Jim, or is there some other way that we can see that organization before, if anybody is interested in the future of this whole facility? I would think that'd be the Friends.
Jim, can you answer that question?
Partially. I had to step away for a second. I had an emergency text, which turned out not to be anything that important. But the Friends has provided funds to support programs at the Nature Center. We want to see the building reopened with staff, whether it's a paid staff or a volunteer staff or volunteers. We want to see the building open some way. We believe in partnerships with other groups. We're looking, we aren't a large group, so we don't have a lot of money to toss around. We wish we did. Although I am doing some work and some of the other members are doing work checking with other organizations to see if there's a way to drum up some funds through either an endowment or just somebody giving us money and putting it into a fund specifically for the Nature Center. I'm looking at the list. I didn't get to hear all the discussion, but the best use of the site and building, I'm with Kathy. My background is in environmental health and safety, and you put in a coffee shop, you've got to deal with the health inspectors. There's also going to be an investment there, whether it's the city or the people coming in are going to have to do some reconstruction. So that's something to consider. You put in a preschool, you're going to have to do the same thing. There's going to be inspections. And there's also probably going to have to be some funds from the city or from somewhere else to do things like maybe put up fencing around the play area to keep the kids in so they don't run into the lake. So there's advantages and disadvantages of both.
Yep.
But the Friends group is working, trying to come up with ways to generate more funds.
Okay. Joe, did that answer your question?
Yes. Yes. I think it takes an event like this to get into trouble to really liven up a volunteer group. I mean, I would think the Friends would come to life, and some of us that probably have not put as much time into them as we should, I think we should test their strength, and I think we would surprise maybe ourselves on what volunteers can do to make this whole program survive.
Well, Joe, I can tell you that most of the members of the board of directors of the Friends group, which is very small, already did volunteer work at the Nature Center or through some part of the center, the city. I did what I could. I know there's people who are frog monitors and other things they're part of it. They're there every day walking the path to check on how the things are going, if there's down trees or something needs to be repaired. But you can only do so much. And we can use all the volunteers we can. So if anybody's interested, get in contact with me and I'll tell you how you can become a part of our group.
I appreciate that. So in the chat box, Marge asked a question of, if environmental education is an obligation, where will or where can that take place if not at the Nature Center? That's a great question. One of the options is to have the engineering and public works staff do more outreach and events at community festivals when we can do those again, or other kinds of outreach. The other thing is to better leverage the website or some of our print materials, Maplewood Living, or maybe a direct mail piece. Or often when we do roadway projects, we have engineering technicians in the field. They can do neighborhood meetings or community meetings or open houses. And so it doesn't have to be specifically done at the Nature Center. It just has to get done. I've seen, and I'm not kidding, I've seen people set up stands at grocery stores and say, here's how to do a rain garden. So there's ways to do outreach. It's just, you have to be a little bit more creative. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see everybody again differently, easier. Who else has comments about maybe the categories or what's missing? I'll go Melanie and then Simba, please.
Yeah, I just on the categories, as I sat here and looked at them, what kept rising to the top as the top one that would drive all the others is the use of the building and the site. Because it just seems like if that's not at the top and the top priority, that really drives all the other things. And so deciding on that seems to me to be a really high priority, and then it will feed the rest of them, or it will at least start to feed the rest of them.
Okay. Thank you. Simba, did I saw your hand or did I not?
I hadn't raised my hand, but I just want to second what Melanie said, that, obviously preserving the site, preserving the building, just to have the potential there for bringing in any kind of programming is huge. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. Other reflections, Kathy Juneman.
Did I have my hand up?
You did.
I'm sorry.
You can say pass.
Yeah, but I do think prioritizing this is really difficult because, and what that tells us, it all meshes together. And so, I'm not sure that, we have to prioritize to a certain extent, but maybe we need to prioritize and have a conversation about how they go together, if you know what I mean. In other words, then that would kind of direct us as to how we would take steps to get started, and that one would be longer term and that type of thing. I think we have to prioritize and then mesh what we prioritized, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think there's any way we can avoid not just the necessity, but the value of environmental education from age 0 to 90. That is what makes it a community asset. So somehow we have to keep that on our screen. And I know that doesn't mean you have to have a program for every age level, but I'm just saying, if it's a community asset and we want to include everyone and we want to reach as many people as we can, then we have to bear in mind that that's what we're doing. And of course, those of you who work in this probably know nature is really a good sales person for itself. So it's just getting people to it. So I agree with, I think it was Liz who was talking about how do we get people to know where it is and what it is. Because we have an asset, and even though it might not be operating at full tilt at this point, it is an asset. So one of our first obligations is to open people's eyes.
Okay, thank you. Others? Categories we're missing, are these the right ones? I'll just read 2 things on the chat box. Jim commented that environmental education begins in the schools. And Martha commented that as much as I and all of us recognize the need and desire for a naturalist, I think Liz is correct that we need to focus on how to keep the building going and how to finance. So whatever is going to happen is sustainable. I also think virtual programming for schools, for families, for adults, homeschooled kids, etc., would be a way to provide programming that is more sustainable initially. I think that probably falls into that service level business model conversation. Does it have to be in person, or can it be virtual? That might be one of the recommendations that we wrestle with, is what's the best way to give environmental education? Is it hands-on learning with this group, or is it structured free learning on the trails that people can access? So I think the word was self-guided was a comment that was made earlier. So Martha, go ahead.
Just to clarify what I was thinking when I said the virtual programming, I'm thinking of like over Google Meets or Zoom, and you know, where not necessarily the self-guided, but you know, there are other organizations that are offering programming that way, and you know, schools that are paying for these virtual field trips, that it's a different, you know, yes, they're cheaper than actually going there, but it, you know, I think about the cost of it. You're really then just paying for the time. You're not paying for the building to be open or for those materials. And, you know, the hands-on environmental education, you know, in my opinion, is definitely far superior to virtual programming, but that virtual programming is something that could be done right now, and could also be an add-on even when, you know, in-person programming is possible, because just like with this meeting, you know, I think had virtual not been an option, it would have been much harder for me to attend these meetings. And you know, there are classes and programming that I think would just be more accessible for more people if that was an option.
Melanie, go ahead.
Yep, I'm going to be the one to poo-poo just a little bit here, because having just gone through, you know, COVID and a whole lot of virtual programming at Tamarack, what we've found in the end is that it really takes as much or more work to do it than it does in person. So I would, while it's different, there are different needs. Don't underestimate the amount of work that it takes to do virtual programming. It's pretty intense.
Great point.
Well, yes, I know. I understand. As a teacher, I understand that it's, yes, you know, the planning time. And I guess I was imagining, you know, once those programs are sort of developed, it's, you know, continuing them is easier.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that we could do is we'll buy your education program that you already did, and we'll just give you a little bit less, so you can just deliver it to our clients at our nature center. So that's just doubled your workload. I appreciate that. So I lost track of where I am, so I will just scan the room, and for folks who are interested, Simba, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I wanted us all to be mindful of when we're talking about using volunteers, which is awesome, and there's a lot of passionate, dedicated, and super talented volunteers out there that might have an interest in doing programming, is that still takes staff time and a fair amount of coordination. And we need to make sure that's a component of our thinking when we make these recommendations. I imagine you spend a fair amount of time putting this stuff together for this meeting, Mike.
A little bit. But you know, part of why I think I'm just going to echo or build on what you just said is, you know, choosing the service level or the business model actually shapes who we would hire. You might not need a naturalist. You might need a expert volunteer coordinator who could get all of these other great naturalist experts. And so making your choice really dictates kind of who we go out and recruit. And so that's why I think this is really important. I mean, that's my HR hat, is you would have a totally different person in the role depending on the choices we make. Martha, go ahead.
And I think just related to that, you know, we talked about, I think last time, about partnerships and collaboratives with other nature centers, and, you know, things like maybe having an online catalog that had programming from all of the nature centers. And so maybe that if there's that type of collaborative or partnership, maybe there are different roles from each nature center that support that whole collaborative, you know, that one of them has the volunteer coordinator and one of them has, you know, the staff that's writing the programming and things like that, that, you know, maybe each nature center provides one staff person, but they each have different specialties to make that whole.
Yeah. Thank you. So it's 6:58, and so I want to be respectful of time. Is there any category that is totally wrong and is crazy, or is there anything that we absolutely missed that has to be included in there? Or do you think there's enough meat in each one that these are kind of the 6 things that if we add in volunteer / expert coordination, do those 6 feel right? And then I also just based on the conversation, I've solving for the use of the site and the building seemed to be number 1. Partnerships seem to be number 2, because that can drive the rest of the conversation. If we spent our time at our next meeting talking about site and partnership, do you think we can have a robust discussion? And Simba, I saw a hand, or was that just moving? Okay. Jim, I saw a hand. Is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
Yes, I think that's a good place to start. But one category that everything that we do that we're looking at revolves around is funds. We have to raise money to do all this. If we don't get any money, all these things are not going to happen. If the city council, which they've said is not going to currently not going to do a levy to pay for this nature center staff or anything like that, then we've got to come up with money. If we don't have money, this is all mute. So I think that's a category we've got to add is fundraising. Establish a fund, a sustainable fund for the nature center.
So I'll add, I've got capital, operational, I'll add fundraising dollars. Is there, Liz, you popped up on the screen. Did you want to add anything? Okay. So what staff, Audra and I are looking at each other online, and we will try to put together a pretty structured conversation that focuses on a recommendation for the site that would be both short-term and long-term, and then a conversation around partnership, identifying the best ones, and probably also, timing wise, who would we go after first and why, and those kinds of things. So in the interim, think about recommendations for site and building and partners, who we would like to partner with and what kind of ranking a priority we would do. The other 4 will be easier once we've solved 1 and 2. So that will be the basis of our next conversation. It's 7:01. I apologize for going late, but thank you so much. This was fantastic, and I'm super grateful for all of your work and all of your support. No final words. We will see you all again very soon. Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.